Welcome back to the show. Today I want to share some thoughts with you on the subject of enthusiasm. I can't tell you that I've mastered enthusiasm every hour of every day. In fact, I guarantee you that I haven't mastered enthusiasm every day, but I want to share some ideas, some concepts with you from a gentleman that lived back in the 1930s by the name of Napoleon Hill. You may have heard his name. He was the author of Think and Grow Rich, and he inspired a lot of people around the world and is still inspiring people many, many years after he passed away. So if you think about the subject of enthusiasm, again, I want to share his words because he's got a boatload of knowledge that he wrote down that I hope that maybe an idea or two will help you in your own struggle with enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is not something that always comes easy for a lot of us. So let me kind of jump into it. Napoleon Hill said, enthusiasm is a state of mind that inspires and arouses one to put into action into the task at hand. He says enthusiasm bears the same relationship to a human being that does steam to a locomotive and is vital moving force that impels action. Now again, we're talking, this was written a long time ago where locomotives, steam-powered locomotives were a lot more popular than what we have these days. He said that the greatest leaders are those who know how to inspire enthusiasm in their followers. He says, if you wish to understand the difference between somebody who is enthusiastic and one who's not, there was a guy years ago named Billy Sunday with the average individual. Billy Sunday was a preacher who was very, very charismatic and very outgoing and very loud. He says the finest sermon ever delivered would fall upon deaf ears if it was not backed by enthusiasm by the speaker. Let me pause for just a moment. The people in your life, let me back up even more. The people throughout history, it seems, history meaning thousands of years throughout history, are the ones, generally speaking, that seem to have more enthusiasm than everybody else. Think about the people in your workplace for a minute. That you are probably attracted to those people that seem to be more enthusiastic than everybody else. Because enthusiasm, for some reason that I don't necessarily want to get into today, biochemically, I think, attracts people to the person who's enthusiastic. And that can be both positive and negative. We're not going to get into the whole thing today. But Napoleon Hill goes on to say, he says, mix enthusiasm with your work and it will not seem hard or monotonous. Now again, sometimes you have to bring enthusiasm to your table. You need to bring enthusiasm to your workplace because some things that you and I have to do are not very fun at all. He says enthusiasm would not be possible for him if he had not energized his body with doing things that he didn't feel like doing. I'm a great reader. I read a lot from people who have been successful, like Napoleon Hill. And 9 times out of 10, these people had to manufacture their own enthusiasm when they didn't even feel like doing some of the things that they needed to do in their life. He says in the book, Napoleon Hill, he says, enthusiasm is not merely a figure of speech, it is a vital force that you can harness and use with profit. Without it, he said, you would resemble an electric battery without electricity. I have a riding lawnmower that used to be my father-in-law's, and we put a new battery in it, put a new spark plug in it, and it still doesn't operate. It's got a brand new battery, but it doesn't crank. I think that's kind of like what you and I are in life without enthusiasm. I think more times than not, you and I have to manufacture our own enthusiasm because of what you and I go through from day to day. Most of us don't get up enthusiastic. Most of us would rather stay in bed every day, all day maybe, instead of getting up and doing the things that we need to do. Years ago, I was on a business trip, and I had to for this particular company, share a room with an individual. So this individual, in the morning, he would jump up and yell, "I feel good, I feel fine, I feel this way all the time. I feel good, I feel fine, I feel this way all the time." And I know he probably wasn't feeling very good that day. But he got up, "I feel good, I feel fine, I feel this way all the time." So what I'm saying here is enthusiasm sometimes has to be manufactured or created in the middle of our stuff. So let me say it again. Sometimes enthusiasm has to be created and manufactured in the middle of our stuff. Talking to me too today, by the way. In fact, all these shows I'm talking to me too, because I'm still trying to get where I need to be in my own life. Back to Napoleon Hill. He said that no one can stop you from determining in your own mind, what your definite chief aim in life shall be, nor can anyone stop you from planning ways and means for translating this aim into reality, nor can anyone stop you from mixing enthusiasm with your plans. If you've been watching the shows long enough, you know that in the last, 10 years, 11 years now, that I've started working out 5-6 days a week because of a variety of things, but primarily because I want to stay in good health, and it's therapeutic, to be completely candid with you. When you exercise, it gets your endorphins going and helps you feel better in the middle of some of your dark times. But most days now, after going to the gym almost every day for all these years, I don't really want to go. But I create in my morning routine a sense of enthusiasm of other people that I'm going to see at the gym that day. Because I know that if I go at a certain time, certain people are going to be there that I hobnob with while we're working out together. So that's my why. That's my little bit of enthusiasm that gets me going, that I need to get to the gym and do what I need to do, even though I don't feel like doing it some days. What I'm saying, I'll say it again, that if you want to be enthusiastic in life and to leverage the enthusiasm, sometimes, most of the time, you have to create the enthusiasm. You need to design the enthusiasm in order to get you over the hump of things that you maybe sometimes don't want to do in the first place. Napoleon Hill says, "Happiness lies always in the future and never in the past." So if you read about, which I would highly recommend, read about people that have been truly successful in life, they have gone through some really tough times. I mean, people that you would think that have all their stuff together, that everything was practically perfect in every way, was actually the complete opposite of practically perfect in every way, because they have gone through stuff that you and I cannot even imagine. Napoleon Hill says, "I wanted to become the editor of a magazine based upon the golden rule, through which I could inspire people to keep up courage and deal with one another squarely," or that's an old term, but meaning that he wanted to help people deal with people with integrity. He says your enthusiasm will affect others. Your enthusiasm will affect others. He says suggestion is the principle through which your words and your acts and even your state of mind influence others. How many times haven't you been around enthusiastic people that get you all fired up, that get you really motivated and enthused? One of the most valuable things, he writes, any person can learn is the art of using their knowledge and experience of other people. In my world, I have leveraged the enthusiasm of other people for me to do things that I was afraid to do. Think about that a second. Have you leveraged the enthusiasm of other people for you to do things that maybe you were not so excited about doing for a long time? What I'm asking you to do is to get into the world of the enthusiastic people so that you can maybe get a little bit of their vibe to do things that maybe you want to do. When I was a kid, very occasionally, we would go see the Baltimore Orioles play baseball. And at that time, it was at Memorial Stadium in downtown Baltimore, Maryland. And there was a guy there named Bill, and the culture, the people there called him Wild Bill Hankey. So Wild Bill would be the cheerleader in a certain area of the stand where the audience sat, and he would get people to do the O-R-I-O-L-E-S sign. So he'd get people all on their feet doing the wave and doing all the things that now decades later, I'm still talking about a guy named Bill who created a sense of enthusiasm with tens of thousands of people when he was just, some people, Ken Blanchard wrote a book called Raving Fans. He was a raving fan of the Baltimore Orioles. His enthusiasm, listen, his enthusiasm blossomed onto other people. Think about all the people that you've met in your life, whether it's at the workplace or at your family, or maybe at social functions that seem to be the center of attraction in that situation. Why? Most of the time, they weren't the quiet ones. They were the most enthusiastic ones. They were the ones with the most enthusiasm that they were doing whatever they were doing. I've worked with people that if you would look at them from the outside had very mundane jobs, but they did their job with great enthusiasm. We had carpet laid one time many years ago. And the guy who came in to put the carpet down, he was one of the most bubbly, outgoing, energetic, enthusiastic people I've ever met in my life. He was a carpet guy. You wouldn't think, if you will, that a carpet guy, installer, would be that enthusiastic. Well, yeah, let me give you another example. When I was a kid, I was probably, I would venture to say, 14, 15, 13 years old, somewhere around there. And my parents and my brother and I and maybe a couple others went to the Grand Canyon, the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Never forget it. It was probably a little older than that. But anyway, in my teens. So there was a server there named Keith. And we dined at this place at the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And Keith, we thought, was going to be like any other server there. There were quite a few in this place of business. And every time that any of us would ask for something, I like a lot of butter on my baked potato and bread. So at the time, I would ask him for more butter, please. And his response 100% of the time was, it can be done. It can be done. Anything I would ask, anything any of us would ask, his immediate response was, it can be done. Now, we're talking probably the mid-'80s now this happened. And I will never forget Keith's response. And he impressed me with his enthusiasm, being a server, that his job was to obviously serve, but he did it with such enthusiasm. It wasn't an effort for him. He didn't, it wasn't tiring for him. We weren't annoying him. At least that wasn't the projection that he was giving us. It was his enthusiasm of his willingness to get what we asked for that impressed me all these years later. So I'm wondering, in your own life, are you able to turn up the enthusiasm button in your own life for the benefit of other people? It's not easy. I'll tell you flat out, and I struggle with it almost every day, that it is not easy to turn on the enthusiasm button when the stuff that's behind the curtain, the stuff that's behind the scenes that not everybody sees or knows about, is really trying to drag you down. Enthusiasm can be manufactured for a period of time. I'm not suggesting that you have to turn that on 24/7. I'm not saying that at all. But people are attracted to people who are enthusiastic, generally speaking. Let me get back to Napoleon Hill. He says, when a public speaker senses, in quotes, the feeling that his audience that is following him, he merely recognizes the fact that his own enthusiasm, listen, that his own enthusiasm has influenced the minds of his listeners until their minds are vibrating in harmony with his own. Let me pause again and share a concept that I've learned over the years. It seems that when you're in a room with an enthusiastic speaker, and they've done studies on this, that many times, I can't tell you the minute details of the science behind it, but the wavelengths of the brain waves of the people, of many of the people in the audience, tend to be similar to the one with the enthusiastic attitude. Think about that for just a minute. If you want to impact people in your life, to get people on your team in an ethical and a moral way, enthusiasm needs to be a part of it. It needs to be a part of the ingredients if you really want to draw people into your circle. There are people that I've watched on TV that I'll turn past the channel, I'll change channels because they're monotone. They're, in my mind at least, they're boring. But I'm attracted to the people that are enthusiastic, that have enthusiasm, that are outgoing, that tend to be bubbly. There was a speaker, there was a teacher, a motivational speaker, business owner, years ago, not that long ago actually, named Zig Ziglar. And Zig would get up and his fire and his enthusiasm and his energy was off the chain. And he would draw people into what he was saying, not only the context of what he was saying and the content of what he was saying, but how he was saying it, the delivery in which he was sharing the information. And I'm wondering if you and I could potentially master some of what I'm sharing here today to bring a system of enthusiasm into your own world that would create maybe a circle around you. Again, you got to be ethical and honest about it and moral about it, because you can use, there have been people that have used enthusiasm. One guy comes to mind named Adolf Hitler, you may have heard his name, that used enthusiasm to do some very evil things. So you got to be really careful if you're going to master what enthusiasm can do with people and for people. It needs to be always ethical and moral. It has to be honest and done with complete integrity all the time. But enthusiasm can literally change an entire conversation to go in a direction that you hadn't imagined before. Back to what Napoleon Hill says. No mere combination of words can ever take the place of a deep belief in a statement that is expressed with burning enthusiasm. He says words are but really sounds unless colored with feeling that is born with enthusiasm. He says you have to have the fire and enthusiasm in order to impact people's lives. So if you want to impact people in a way that they'll remember, think about this a second. If you want to impact people in a way that they will remember, it needs to be mixed with enthusiasm. All the great salespeople, no matter who they are, no matter what field they come in, have always had enthusiasm. Why is it? I mean, it attracts people to what you're trying to get across. The most influential people on the planet are people that have drawn people with their passion. And I'm not saying you have to keep it all the time. I'm not saying that at all. But people who are in leadership positions in any range, in any form, understand the power of enthusiasm. Napoleon Hill says your acts, your ACTS, your acts will count for more than your words, and woe unto you if you too fail to harmonize that with enthusiasm and with your words. I don't know what it is about the human psyche or the human mind, but people are drawn like bugs to a light when you're enthusiastic. That's why in these shows that I do, I try to be a little more animated than just reading my notes, just to remind myself of where I want to go in a particular episode. Napoleon Hill says that they control the tone of your words and to some extent your actions. Think about all the politicians that the United States has had over the last, pick a number, 30 years, 40 years, 80 years, 100 years, and you can remember the ones right off the bat who seem to have the most charisma, that seem to have the most enthusiasm in what they were trying to get across, versus the people that were not so enthusiastic. I could name names, I'm not going to name names, but you're drawn to, people are attracted to the people with enthusiasm. So not only the tone of your words, but how you come across to people and the people that you look at. He says that enthusiasm makes people believe that you're confident. Think about that a second. Enthusiasm makes people think that you're confident just because of how you are bringing your message to the person that you're trying to come across to. Again, I'm no scientist by any stretch, but I can tell you that people are going to be drawn more to you to how you are around other people. There are people that I've worked with over the years that were, I'll just say, average at best. They weren't particularly talented. They were not particularly good looking. They maybe didn't dress like people that were professional all the time. But they had a charisma about them that was unbelievable. I worked with a young lady by the name of Chris many years ago, K-R-I-S, who was not very organized. She had some personal challenges, like all of us do, but her ability to be bubbly, and I think part of that was her sanguine personality style, was able to attract people to what she was doing in her business that far exceeded the people that were monotoned, that had other personality styles or ways of interacting with other people that weren't so enthusiastic. She laughed all the time, at least most of the time. She was bubbly. She would raise the octave in her voice when she would be around other people. Hey, Joe. Hey, Mary. And we up like this. Again, there are techniques that you and I can use if you want to leverage enthusiasm as a tool in your tool belt, if you will, to be impactful to other people in an ethical and a moral way. Again, I'll say it multiple times, it has to be ethical and moral for the benefit of other people. Because people are attracted to people that are happy. People are attracted to people that are enthusiastic. People will reflect, it's amazing to me what enthusiasm will do. And I mentioned it about Wild Bill Hagee at the baseball game. He was one guy with his big scruffy beard, wore a hat all the time, and his enthusiasm would get, like I said, tens of thousands of people to do things that they probably wouldn't have done if Bill hadn't gotten the crowd going. If you scale that down a lot to your own workplace or to your own family, enthusiasm can really pull a group of people, whether it's the family or workplace, to do some things that are pretty extraordinary as a result of the enthusiasm. There's a finance company that I know in Westminster, Maryland, who, from what I understand from some of the employees there, the leadership of that organization is very enthusiastic in how they deal with their employees. It's very positive. It's very motivational. It is, they work in an environment where, very frankly, they all love to go to work every day. And why is that? Because the people at the top understand what enthusiasm does to an organization. I'll say it again. People at the top know what enthusiasm does to an organization. People at the top understand what enthusiasm does to a culture. Again, I mentioned Adolf Hitler moments ago. Enthusiasm impacts cultures in ways that are not always productive, that are not always ethical, that are not always moral. There's a guy that not that many years ago named Jim Jones. Because partly of his enthusiasm, he led a lot of people to their deaths as a result of the people not looking under the covers, if you will, of the moral and the ethical background of this guy named Jim Jones. So enthusiasm can be taken both ways, to two extremes. The extreme of doing harm to people and also to helping people get something that they really want out of life anyway through enthusiasm. So enthusiasm can be manufactured, it can be created, and if you want to really pull people into your world, I would suggest that maybe you develop ways to bring that characteristic of enthusiasm into your own life, because you're going to bring yourself into a circle of people that you've never dreamed possible as a result of mastering the skill sets of bringing enthusiasm into not only your home, but also your workplace and what you do at work. Because when you do stuff with enthusiasm, your day goes a whole lot faster. So I'm hoping that an idea or two from this show will give you some tools and some ideas and some concepts that can help you develop the skill set. And again, it is a skill set of enthusiasm in your own life that will not only transform your own personality in your own life and your own well-being, but more importantly, the people around you. My name is John Carver. Thanks for watching, and I hope you got an idea or two for your own life. I'll talk to you real soon.